Welcome back to the podcast, HOA Hell. I'm your host, Michael Kushner, and with me today is Senior Associate at the law firm MBK Chapman, Sam Kill.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Fine, thanks, Sam. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. Today, we're going to cut through kind of the noise and lay down the law on one of the most common topics that comes up, routinely at least, in California in the last couple of years, and that's ADUs, Accessory Dwelling Units.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I will say for this episode, the rights that we're talking about ADUs, which are sometimes called granny flats, sometimes are called guest houses,
Casitas.
Casitas, accessory apartments, in-law units, that sort of thing. We're talking about single-family homes because your right to build these ADUs, it's got to be your property.
Right.
So when it comes to condominiums or townhomes that are classified as condominiums, you can't just say, hey, I want to build an ADU in the common area over there. So really, we're talking to owners of single-family homes today.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But with that out of the way, ADUs is a hot button topic, right?
Indeed. Absolutely.
You're in the trenches every day.
Mm-hmm.
You talk with what we call PCs, our potential clients.
Right.
You talk with our consults all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong in saying this comes up all the time?
Tremendous interest. I mean, as you know, California public policy has been very encouraging of these where they're eligible in HOAs. And, our PCs, potential clients, have a lot of interest, many issues they're running into,
right.
A lot of confusion.
So
hopefully we'll set that
So
straight.
we're going to talk. Let's start with talking about some of those problems that they run into. One of the problems that they run into most frequently is an HOA, typically a board member, expressing the opinion that, well, we don't allow ADUs. Mm-hmm. Okay, and a lot of HOAs in California, their governing documents specifically ban ADUs.
Yeah.
And the thing is those were written before the new laws. Mm-hmm. And I say new, they're really not that new. They're several years old, but they were written before laws in California specifically and explicitly protected your right to have an ADU. So let's start with the very basics, okay? California law, and we'll get to the specifics on that statute in a few minutes, but California law specifically protects a homeowner's right to build an ADU on their property. Now, ADUs come in multiple forms. We're going to talk about the two that, we're going to define the two that are most common, okay? An ADU, again, an accessory dwelling unit, but they're called other names, or a junior ADU, right, or a JADU, okay? And the difference there is really one of scope and size and accoutrements. So a regular ADU is what you might think, typically. It'll be, somewhere in the backyard or the side yard, you build a little apartment. And to classify as an ADU, it's got to have like a separate entrance, and it's got to have a kitchen, and it's got to have a bathroom, and it's got to have a bedroom or a place for somebody to sleep, right? It could be a studio. It doesn't have to have a separate bedroom, but you have to have those things, okay? Where a JADU typically can't be larger. I think it's in 500 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might have a kitchenette, so it's a partial kitchen. And it might have, and it requires you to share a bathroom. So it might be a separate unit altogether, or it could be actually part of the main home, but it's got to have a separate entrance. Mm-hmm. But those are really the differences. We're going to treat them as one and the same today. We're not going to talk separately about JADUs and ADUs because we're talking very broadly today about the right to have this granny flat. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about whether or not, we've kind of spoiled it, right? Your HOA cannot deny.
No.
And yet they try so hard, okay? You gotta give them that. They really try, okay? But almost always they can't.
Not
okay?
outright, not flat out without any right.
And so let's put it this way. The law makes it very clear, and it's become a public policy in California, okay? ADUs are protected. It's not just a statute. It's literally a public policy, which is a stronger version of a statute, okay? And HOAs, as a rule, cannot ban ADUs, and they can't enforce rules that do everything they can to ban ADUs without banning them outright.
If it's analogous or tantamount to a ban or prohibition, effectively, right, because they make it miserable for you to even get one.
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
So in 2025, this year, the state of California, the legislature revamped the prior ADU rules, ADU statute, and renumbered it. So what we're talking about today is not the old number, which if you Google it, you'll find it under the old number because, again, this is very new. The law is not new, but the restructuring is new. So we're looking at Government Code 6637 is the current ADU law in California. Okay? Now, regardless of what your HOA CC&R say, regardless of what your HOA's architectural guidelines say or rules and regulations, even if it explicitly bans ADUs, it's not enforceable as a matter of law. Okay? That's just bottom line. They cannot ban it outright. They cannot require you to apply for a variance saying, okay, well, we're not banning it, but you've got to ask for permission. No, you do not have to ask for permission to build an ADU. As we'll get to later, they do have rights to require you to apply through the normal architectural process, and they have rights to limit some, to impose some controls, and we'll get to those, but those are limited. But what they can't do is say, it is not permitted, but we will hear your argument and decide whether to grant you a variance. No. You can build your ADU. How you build it has to conform to certain guidelines. Okay, some are state or local mandated, some are HOA mandated or can be mandated by your HOA. But as to whether or not you can build it, it's a foregone conclusion. Yes, you can. Okay? So start from the premise, really, it should be, tell me a reason why you, my HOA, are going to deny me this ADU. That's the premise you should start with. Do you agree?
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay. And of course, they can't, in bad faith, they can't delay the process.
Right.
Unreasonably. Okay, which is another tactic. We'll get to that. Okay. As long as your project complies with state law and local law, obviously it's got to be safe for habitation. Yep. So it's got to, state residential construction codes and local municipal county codes. You have to abide by those, okay? You can't build a death trap, okay? But as long as your ADU complies with state and local law, including zoning, okay, your HOA can't say no, period, end of story. Okay, so let's talk about what the law actually says. Let's go to Government Code 66317, which is the revamped version of 65852.2, okay? And that's the controlling statute. And Sam, I think we covered what it basically says is you can have an ADU,
You can have an ADU in communities where you have single-family residences or planned unit development homes, which are analogous to SFRs, and they can't outright ban you. They cannot unreasonably interfere or prohibit these. One common one, real quick to sneak it in there, that I see and I get is, oh, we've never had these. No one else has them, so therefore you shouldn't really expect.
Yeah, it's completely disharmonious to our neighborhood. Aesthetic, who cares?
So
it doesn't matter if you're the only one.
Right. So that's a classical case of it goes afoul of that
exactly.
law.
And it doesn't matter if it's going to be a blight. In the sense of it crowds the backyard.
Yeah.
Let's say this community has smaller yards, and they want it to have certain looks. They want a certain amount of open space.
Right.
Too bad. As long as you're within the setback requirements.
Exactly.
Set by the code. Not the HOA setback requirements, by the way.
Right.
Because that's a way a lot of HOAs, they increase setback. No. If the HOA has adopted the county or the city, whichever is applicable, if they adopted those setback requirements, great. And as long as you're following those setback requirements, you're good. But the HOA can't go higher and say, well, a great way to shut this down was to require 25-foot setbacks instead of 10-foot.
Well, you just said it. I mean, so long as you're comporting with zoning requirements and local ordinances, right? Sometimes you have city and county, like in San Diego, you have city and county oftentimes. And so long as you're compliant with those, everything's copacetic.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as long as you're complying with those and you're not, and state codes, right? Building codes, for safety and everything, the HOA can't stop you. But they can do certain things. Yeah. They can do certain things. So let's talk about that. Okay. What can your HOA do to regulate your right to build an ADU? Okay. So HOAs can't block them, but they have some limited authority to do some sort of regulation. And it's limited. I say limited on purpose because it is limited. Because if they go too far, then what they're doing is they're running afoul of the statute that says you can't ban it outright and you can't take steps to ban it in, de facto ban it, right?
Exactly.
You've got to You can't put so many hoops in front of the homeowner that it's the same thing.
Don't be obstructionist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So architectural consistency, right? You agree with this? Your HOA
Sure.
can require your ADU to match, the roof to match your roof, the paint color to match your house, the main structure's paint color, the facade to be of matching. They can prevent you from building something completely unique. You can't put a castle in the back, okay, with turrets and, right? You don't get to do that. You can't just build anything you want back there. It's got to match.
Pink metallic structure. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Right. You can't build the bat cave, at least from the outside, okay? Unless your house is, the bat cave. So I like using the castle because we had somebody, I don't know if you know this, but we had a client once that wanted to build a couple of turrets and do it like a castle. And no, you can't. The HOA said no. HOA was very clear. We don't have a problem with you building an ADU, but it's got to match your house. Now, if your house is a castle, then I guess your ADU could be a castle because it would match, but you can't build something entirely different. So they can require some sort of architectural consistency. Right. What else? What else can they do?
You mentioned the color scheme, external features such as roofing, the stucco, perhaps the texture, so long as there's consistency. I mean, that speaks to the same issue. Right. Let's see. What else?
We talked about one. They can't have stricter zoning.
Yeah.
Or stricter setback requirements, but what they can do is ensure that you're following the city. Right. They can be the city enforcer, okay? They can say, without the city ever having come down and looked at it, even if you got, let me give you an example. Let's say your HOA, let's say your city has a setback requirement of 10 feet so that no structure could be built within 10 feet of the property line. Okay, let's just say that's the case from the back property line. And we're talking about your backyard here. And you somehow get cleared. You get a city permit to build your ADU and you're 8 feet from the property line. So somehow or another, city okayed you, even though you're violating the city's own setback requirement. If the HOA were to look at the plans and say, you're only 8 feet, we're going to deny that, they're within their rights to do that, even though the city already said yes, because you are technically violating the city-wide setback of 10 feet because you're 8 feet in. So HOA can do that. Something else they can do is they can monitor noise, nuisance, that sort of thing, okay? They can make sure that, especially if you're going to use your ADU as a rental, that you're abiding by whatever rental controls that they legally have in their HOA. For example, HOAs are permitted in California to ban short-term rentals, which are defined as under 30-day rental periods. They can deny those outright, okay? If your HOA is one of the ones that doesn't, but has rules regarding rentals, then your ADU would have to follow whatever those rules were, okay? Or if your HOA banned short-term rentals, then you can't use your ADU for short-term rentals. You can't. You've got to follow those sorts of things. They can impose those. Parking too. They can't impose stricter parking requirements, but they can hold you to the same parking requirements as everybody else. Okay? They can't make you they can't take your home and go, okay, now that you're adding this, you need to purchase the rights to X amount of parking. They can't do that. But they can say you can't park in front of driveways, you can't park in red zones, and you can't park in guest spaces, that sort of thing. They can still require that, even though you're going to have one or more people, maybe another car or two, residing at your property. They can control whether or not you provide more of an impact on the neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But they can't add extra parking restrictions on you that they don't add to every other regular homeowner.
No.
Okay? And can they make you fill out an application and apply?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
just like everything else.
Yeah, of course.
Right? You've got to go through the architectural process. You've got to submit your plans. But what can they not do? Well, they can't stick. Tell me if you recognize this. They can't stick, well, we need an impact report. Or we want an analysis of the parking impact it's going to have. Or we want you to submit not only plans, but also, I don't know, an environmental study or something. Right. They can't impose new requirements on you that the code, the statute, the state law does not impose. They can't impose anything like that. They can't make up new hoops. They can have you apply through the normal architectural process, but they can't go further than that.
Right.
Okay. But that's where we see the most abuse is the tactics. And I'm going to let you talk about some of those. The tactics that HOAs use to block or delay ADU projects. And delay is an important one because often that increases cost substantially.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the example you just gave right now, those additional requirements that are not kind of contemplated or provided for by the code, those invariably lead to delays because you're creating all these additional prerequisites that are not compulsory or mandatory, and they cost money.
Yeah,
so you are creating hurdles, impediments, and in a sense, that's being obstructionist, right? I mean, so they can't do that. I mean, obviously they can't. And that can come in various forms. And guess what? Boards can get really creative. And we say this all the time. The human mind has virtually no limits.
Boards are very creative, and bad HOAs are even more creative. So let's talk about some of the creative ways that we've seen, just in cases that we've processed and dealt with over the years. I'll start you off, and then I want you to take a couple on your own, okay?
Let's go.
Here's one that we've seen lots. Pretending, and I say pretending that your application wasn't received.
Yeah.
Okay? We see that all the time. That's just low-hanging fruit. I mean, that one doesn't take much creativity if I'm being honest.
Right.
But they do it. And so our one of the techniques that we recommend is that you send them in two ways. Either you drop it off in person and ask for, a receipt or a confirmation, or at least you get home and confirm, hey, Jonathan, management company Jonathan, thanks for talking with me a few minutes ago. This just confirms I just dropped off my completed application for my ADU. Okay? Or you do that in conjunction with emailing it to Jonathan.
Yeah.
In addition to my hand delivery a few minutes ago, here's an email version of what I just handed you.
Right.
So do it in two ways that really can't be denied. Both of them together can't be denied. Okay? You have another one? What's one of the other creative?
Well, we mentioned one with the impact study. I see that quite a bit, where they require all these additional things that they kind of just sua sponte came up with. There's really no basis for it in the code or the statutory scheme.
Let me ask you a question. Have you seen HOAs say, we're okay with ADUs, but go ahead and get your neighbors to sign off?
Yeah, so neighbors
which is often required for your landscaping or for a new paint. You get your neighbors to sign off, right? Everybody has to do that. I've done that. Is it legal here?
It's one thing to notify your neighbors.
I'm talking about requirement sign-off.
Yeah, requirement sign-off in a sense that's analogous to an approval or consent. No,
right. They actually can't require you to even get a sign-off that you notified your neighbors. They can't add that requirement. Not even that.
No.
Even if they no, their consent is irrelevant, but you need to sign off saying that you talked to them. They can't do that. They can't. The courts have said they can't do that. Right. They cannot do that.
Right.
Okay, that is a hoop that the code does not contemplate, not required. As far as the state law is concerned with respect to ADUs, your neighbors are completely irrelevant. Okay?
Board meetings. We'll take it up at the next board meeting, and then guess what? Quorum is not met, or the meeting is not held, and then it keeps getting...
Well, that's delaying.
Delaying, right.
That is delaying the process. So we didn't get your application. And then next you have inventing requirements. And then next you have, and he's jumping to that, you have, we need, it's most common I see it this way, we need more documentation from you, or we're missing this, we're missing that. And what they're missing either was provided or isn't required. Or they punt. They take it, they say, well, we're going to discuss this at the next meeting, which is 3 weeks from now. And then, of course, 3 weeks comes and goes, and they don't get not everybody on the board shows up, and then maybe they don't get a quorum. And although they can still meet, by the way, under some new laws, they can still meet. But when it comes to the board, but let's just say they don't. Okay, yeah, we know what you're doing. No, too bad. Okay, you have to process these in an expeditious, good faith manner, and that's from the day it is submitted, not from the day that the board happens to get together and bring this up and put it on the agenda to discuss. No. And by the way, this is not one of those things that should be discussed in executive session.
Right.
Okay? This is an open meeting situation. Okay? So, I'm fine if the architectural committee wants to take a look at this, okay, to make sure that it conforms with city setback and that sort of thing. Make sure that it conforms with mandated codes, safety. It's got to meet earthquake and fire codes and all the other building codes and everything else that people live in have to meet. But after all that, nah. Okay, your HOA has to act expeditiously and reasonably, and that means it's measured from the day of the submittal. Now, in my opinion, if your HOA is one of the ones that has language in the governing documents that say if a architectural submission is not, addressed or rejected within X amount of days from its submission, it's deemed automatically approved, I would say that applies here. So if you have that, I would say there's your deadline, okay? If your HOA is one of the many that doesn't have language like that, where it's automatically deemed approved after X amount of time, they still have to act expeditiously and reasonably. And if they don't, then you can take action against them. Now, what is that? What is reasonably? There's no bright line. I would say 30 to 45 days.
Agreed.
Okay? Anything longer than 45 days, unless your particular plans present some sort of anomaly or problem, which I find hard to contemplate, but unless it's something like that, I say 45 days. And anything longer than that, to me, starts to get into the unreasonable mode. But again, it's not a bright line, so it really is very case dependent. Okay, we'd have to analyze that ourselves. Here's one, and this could be good faith ignorance, but an HOA, some board members are just not aware of what the law is, and they're relying on these outdated governing documents because there's no law in California that required HOAs to update governing documents when it came to ADUs. Often when new laws are passed regarding elections and stuff like that, part of the law requires the HOA to amend their governing documents to conform, but this isn't one of those. So you might have good faith HOA board members who are just ignorant. And that's where a management company is supposed to come in and know their thing. But let's say your HOA doesn't have a management company, or let's say they do and the management company's ignorant, which is unforgivable because that's the only reason they're being paid. In that case, it sometimes, and this is rarely, but sometimes it comes down to just basic ignorance. And as soon as we educate them, they're like, "Oh, we didn't know." And they go to the lawyer. The lawyer goes, "Yeah, you should have asked."
Yeah, I was just about to say, I've seen instances where they go to the attorney, and that adds to the delays. But then you can kind of
at least they're going to the attorney
on a case by case basis. You can kind of get some guidance there. Yeah,
right. Here's one. Can they tell me this, Sam? Can they charge you an ADU application fee?
No. I mean, if they have normal architectural standard fees for that HOA that's contemplated in their governing documents, I guess for the standard application, yes, but no more than that.
Right, like a project management. Some HOAs on really high-end HOAs where you got multi-million-dollar properties, and sometimes they do, the HOA insists on a management fee so they can monitor progress. But I would argue, now I actually don't have the answer to this. I think that they're probably okay doing that, but I think an argument could be made that it's not okay, that the state law preempts that. I don't have an answer for that either way, so I would litigate that way either way.
So if you frame it ADU fee, absolutely not.
Right.
No, they can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I agree. If it's a normal fee that's charged to everybody that does construction, then I think it's probably going to pass muster, and it'll be enforceable. Okay, but if it's an ADU fee, or if they take a normal fee but then they up it, they increase it, but only for ADUs, it's the same thing. No, they can't do that. That's a no-no. Okay, how about this one? Selective enforcement. Is that ever okay?
No, definitely not.
If they've allowed 15 ADUs and they're giving you a problem, that's selective enforcement. Unless you're creating the problem. Let's say you're placing a death trap. Well, okay, they can stop you. In other words, they got to be fair to everybody. Okay, that's it. Those are the creative ways that we see HOAs. I mean, they're really limited. I'm sure new HOAs will come up with new ones, but those are the main ones that we've seen. Okay, and what they are designed to do is not ultimately in the end win, because ultimately if you really want your ADU and you press, eventually you'll succeed. What it's supposed to do, and it does work, is it's supposed to wear enough people down where enough people just kind of quit.
Dissuade you from moving forward.
Forget it. I'm not doing this. It's too expensive, or it's too much hassle. It's too time consuming. They're making me out to be a bad guy. They're saying I'm wasting money. Now they're telling people that I'm wasting resources, and now my neighbors are getting mad. I mean, that's what these bad HOAs do. These HOAs from hell. That's what they do, and it's to dissuade enough people to make it worth their while to do. And it's never okay, and don't ever allow it. So let's move on to naturally. What do we do, you as a homeowner, if your HOA is blocking your ADU rights? Okay, there are lots of things that you can do. And we're going to start with some of the basics. You've heard these many times from us before. Well, the first one is frame the issue in writing.
Yeah.
And demand written justification for the denial.
Yeah, what's the basis for it?
Yeah. So I would say on this date, I submitted my full package. It conforms to all of the proper building codes, the state and local building codes and setback requirements. And it matches my home in texture, color, and scheme. You have no legal right to block me. So I'm asking you now, on what basis are you denying my application? And I want you to list all the bases on which you're denying, not just one or two of them, all of them. Make them put their cards on the table, all their cards. Straight out in writing, very nicely, very professionally. Don't slog it down with insults or demands. Just say, state for me every basis you have to deny this application, since, in my opinion, it conforms with state and local laws, regulations, and requirements, and it matches my home. Go.
Yeah.
And they have to do it. If they don't, great.
Yeah.
We want to hear that. If you come to us, that's going to be good news for us.
And by the way, framing it that way in writing not only helps you document those issues, but you're also educating them, because you're saying, like, look, I've done this, and this, and that comports with the legal requirements.
That's right. And
now you go.
And you're putting them on notice that you're not going to be a pushover and that you know the law, which leads me right to my second one, which is cite the law. 66317 of the government code. Cite it. Say in that email or letter, I prefer the email because you can prove delivery, and you send it more than one person, there's no way none of them got it. I have conformed with local state mandates, including government code 66317. State all the reasons, provided the bases of your denial, all of them, every single one of them. You are making them take a stand. Now, if they ignore it, that is great ammunition for you. If they respond, but only partially, then they're playing games. It's obvious, because they didn't follow a very fair and simple and logical and objective request, which is please state all your reasons. Okay? So cite the law back to them. Make it clear that you have read that statute, even if you haven't. Make it clear that you're familiar with the statute and that you're calling them on it. That's number 2. Okay? What if that doesn't work? What's next?
Well, you can request IDR.
When should you do that?
Internal dispute resolution, meet and confer with the board. You should do that when some of the preliminary steps have been to no avail. And you clearly have on its face what appears to be a dispute. Now you're at odds, and other than documenting it and holding them to account and putting the burden on them to indicate the basis for their objections or denials, now you're saying, look, that didn't work, so let's have this meeting pursuant to my statutory rights under Civil Code 5910, 5915, which you're entitled to, by the way.
To remind everybody, IDR, when a homeowner puts a request in writing to their HOA that they want internal dispute resolution, the HOA is obligated to engage. The HOA cannot charge, even if the lawyer is present, cannot charge anybody. And it guarantees that you at least get to sit face-to-face, even if it's over the phone or Zoom, but you get to sit face-to-face with one or more board members to discuss the issue that you want to discuss. In addition to that, though, and this is important, no matter what your governing documents may or may not say, or what your manager might or might not tell you, IDR is never required of you. No. It's only required of the HOA if you make the written demand for it. But my caveat for IDR is don't bother if you don't think it's going to be helpful.
True.
If you're dealing with an abrasive board or a board that is retaliatory and they just don't like you, which is why they're giving you a problem, don't bother. You skip it, okay? And they can't make you do it. But I would skip it. If it's not going to help, don't do it. If you think it might help, then by all means do it, okay? It's going to take some time, but other than that, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything.
By the way, real quick, before we get to that, and this is not so much a remedial step, but more so part of your documentation too. Somewhere in between that, if you notice others who've done this in the community and they've been allowed to.
Well, that's the next one. So let's get to that.
Okay,
you're jumping on to the next one.
Let's go. Yeah.
You're raring to go. So I'm gonna let you jump away with that. So the next the next thing you can do is gather comparison data. So tell me what that is.
Yeah. I mean, part of that, what I was just alluding to was whether this is selective enforcement or arbitrary denials, or a board member gets to have their ADU or JADU, but then they're denying you arbitrarily for whatever reason or due to animus.
Or they're just giving you reasons that don't make much sense to you, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And they were not very clear in terms of articulating the basis for those denials either when you requested them in writing.
Right.
Go ahead and chronicle, take photographs, video recordings of other homes within the community that did get this approved.
Yeah. Go take pictures of other ADUs that are similar to yours.
Yeah. And you can use that in various ways, right? I mean, if you believe that doing the IDR, which we just discussed earlier, is potentially a productive avenue of exploring a resolution, you can bring those in and say, look, what about these guys?
Yeah.
So.
And I will say this. Remember, the HOA has a few different things that it can impose, right? They can make sure that ADU fits within the scheme of your house, right? Also, there are size limitations, okay? I think 1,200 square feet is the maximum. So you can't build if your house is 3,000 square feet, you can't build, and let's say you have a really big yard, you can't build a 5,000 square foot ADU.
Right.
You can if they allow it, and if it fits if it's got 3 acres and they want to allow you to build another home, I guess they can. But I mean, they don't, not under the ADU law, right?
Right.
There are size limitations to that effect.
And I think local ordinances speak to that.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. But bottom line is, if your ADU conforms with all the requirements and it's similar to other ADUs, go around to your neighbors and take pictures. Put the camera up over there. Make sure they're not back there. That would be a privacy issue. But take pictures of their ADUs. Okay. Yeah. I have hired people to drone over the neighborhood and you take video and pictures as long as nobody was in the yard at the time. Otherwise, we throw it out. But I've done that, even though it technically violated some policies, because it's great evidence. So I did it. But I mean, pictures. You've heard pictures speak 1,000 words, right? Mm-hmm. Worth 1,000 words. Well,
absolutely. Yeah.
I agree with that. And so there you go. Save yourself some time and get evidence. But do some comparison analysis, unofficially, okay, so that you have ammunition, okay? Now, the last thing is, if none of those work, that's when you come to us. MBK Chapman, okay? You come to us, we've got tremendous amount of experience on this very issue. We will 100% hold your HOAs accountable. So on that, let me just close by saying public policy in California protects a homeowner's right to build an ADU on their property. And as long as you conform to state and local ordinances regarding setbacks and zoning and safety and code enforcement requirements, your HOA cannot prevent the construction of the ADU. End of story. They can insist that it match the look and feel of your primary structure. They can make sure that you're in compliance with the state and local codes, and that's about it. Okay? They can't charge fees that they don't charge for everybody else. For regular building, they can't have an ADU fee. They can't prevent it because they don't like it. They can't prevent it because it's going to crowd up the neighborhood or ruin the aesthetic. They can't prevent it because it's not harmonious to the look and feel of an open space yards that they contemplate in the neighborhood. None of that's relevant. They can't do any of that. And so once you've taken the steps to get them to change their mind that we outlined here, if that doesn't work, you call us and we'll set your HOA straight. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It does help us a lot to have subscribers. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question on this topic or any other, please do so. We read all of them. And last but not least, until next time, have a wonderful day.